HorsePlayerNow.com's Joe Christopher discussing the evaluation of import horses, and helping us do that today is the Director of Racecourse Services for the International Racing Bureau, Adrian Beaumont. And Adrian, let's start with your role at the IRB, exactly what you do and how you serve as kind of a buffer between European racing and American racing.
That's right. I'm like an international racing office for all my client tracks, which includes Arlington. I've been coming to Arlington every year since 1986. Estrapade's year is my first year coming over, although I've been involved with the Arlington since the inception of the races. And my job is really to recruit the horses, persuade people to come across, and then reassure them that I'll be there to look after them. So whatever they need in the way of everything from when the horse arrives, from vet to blit to feed to blacksmith to all the other integral parts, I can help them with. And obviously as the owners and trainers, the horsemen arrive, I look after them. Basically it's my job to work with the racing officials at Arlington in the racing office and beyond to make sure that they are fully aware. And I also work with the media like yourself to make sure you guys are all aware of what horses are coming and their relative strengths.
Now, the globe has really shrunk, so to speak, in recent years. International racing continues to grow on a season-by-season basis with international events all over the world. Arlington Million, of course, coming up next week. You've got the Breeders' Cup. You've got the Canadian International. You've got the Dubai Racing Carnival, which has become huge in recent years. And horses are globe-trotting more so than ever. And as a handicapper, Adrian, we like to try to be able to compare horses in the best possible way to try to cash tickets. Discuss some of the major differences between U.S. and European racing, whether it's the turf courses, class, pedigree and stamina, the ground itself, training regimens. What are some of the major differences that fans should know about?
Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much headlined that yourself in that obviously the vast majority of our racing here in Europe is turf racing. We do have a limited amount of racing on synthetics. We have no dirt tracks at all, and the synthetics tend to be pretty low-class racing. So you're looking at turf racing, and here in England, we only race turf racing from March through November. So on the flat, through the winter we do jumping, which I know is not a big thing in the States. But on the flat game, we run through the season, and we have what we call carnivals, big festivals. We only race a few days at a time at each different track. All the horses are stabled in their own stabling environments. They don't stable on course like they do in the States. And we ship them every day to run. So horses here at Newmarket, which is probably the principal training centre where I'm based, we do have a race course here, but the horses don't train on it. They train in their own private facilities, and then they'll put them in a horse box and they'll take them to Ascot, Newmarket, York, St Anne, Epsom, wherever they want to go. And of course we'll also race them throughout Europe, and as you say, we do race them intercontinentally as well. So as Mike de Kock famously said, and he's bringing the Apache over to the Million, it's like posting a letter. You just basically pick where you want to go and you ship them over, and our trainers, they're not afraid to run horses pretty regularly. We would race them, I'd say, normally every 2 to 3 weeks. Mostly because throughout the summer we have the big festival meetings. We've just done, I'm sure you're familiar with Royal Ascot, and then we had Newmarket, and last week we had Glorious Goodwood. We're just coming up now, the week after Arlington will be our famous York meeting. So there's lovely meetings through the year and lots of grade one opportunities. And of course, we probably breed more for stamina than you guys do in the States. We tend to do well in the stamina. A lot of our training is done up hills. In Newmarket, we have some really good hills like Side Hill and Warren Hill, Long Hill. So we do a lot of conditioning work up hills rather than the flat tracks that you have, and so that builds stamina in. And the pace of our races is somewhat different in that. Of course, you guys tend to go from the outset. You'll often jump out the gates and run, whereas our races tend to be run more tactically, and the jockeyship comes into it a lot more over here in terms of the judgment of the paces and so forth, and the configurations of the courses. Don't forget, we go left-handed, right-handed. We have plenty of straight courses. Newmarket's, if you see the racing at Newmarket here, we can race anything up to 1.25 miles. If we were running the Arlington Million, it would be over a straight track here in Newmarket.
So that brings me to my next question, which is, what are some of the reasons why European outfits would send horses to North America to compete in races like the Million, Canadian International Breeders' Cup? Is it the purses, the competition, maybe increasing their breeding value for once the horse retires, or is it a combination of all three of those things?
I think there's a few different issues. I think the prize money is probably the biggest draw. The prize money in America is generally fantastic, and it's particularly good in relationship possibly to the depth of the turf stayers that you guys have. I think we know that particularly for a race like the Secretariat, for example, the money is wonderful at $500,000. We do have that level of prize money over here in England as well, but for probably races that are tougher to win, I would say, you have to go for races like the King George at Ascot or the Arc or what have you to match those purses, and those races are very, very hard to win over here. So sometimes the European horseman will think that there is maybe a softer opportunity for the most valuable prize money that you have. Plus, it's just finding the right race in the calendar. We think nothing of factoring in race at Arlington as just a part of our season. We would come over and race with you whilst comparing ourselves to races in, for example, in Germany or Italy or France or what have you. Our trainers think nothing of coming to Chicago as just part of the European season. Of course, we also have the added advantage, of course, if you need to use Lasix, that's something that's allowable in American racing, which is not over here in Europe.
Now, here in America, speed figures are a major handicapping tool, whether it be the Beyer speed figures, the Briss numbers, some of the sheets that are used, et cetera, et cetera. Overseas, we have the Racing Post ratings, we have the Time Form ratings, we have Globe Form. How can they be used in handicapping, and how do they differ from the traditional American speed figure?
I would say that the Racing Post ratings are probably quite similar to a Beyer speed rating in that they tend to sort of assimilate the form of each individual run on its own merits, taking into consideration things like the ground and the speed and various other factors on the day. I tend not to use them myself because I think they jump around too much. I was looking at some of the ratings on some of my horses that are coming to you, and they can they fluctuate violently from race to race. And I'm not sure they give an accurate assessment of the actual quality of the horse. One interesting rating, if you're looking on the Racing Post's own website, is what they call the OR, which is the official rating that the handicappers over here give. Every horse in the world now has an official rating. People like Chris Polson in your racing office would know what the ratings are of the local horses. But those ratings tend to don't fluctuate quite so much. If I'm looking at a horse like Wigmore Hall, his official rating is 113, and that is a pretty static rating. And yet he jumps around from 110 to 114 to 101 to 107 on the Racing Post rating. So it definitely assimilates the form for that actual run, and that might be appealing to some of your handicappers, some of your gamblers. But I prefer the official rating, which tends to give a more accurate assessment of the horse's overall performance throughout the season.
Now, you mentioned earlier, Adrian, that once a group of horses cross the pond to compete in some of our bigger races over here, you come over. One of your jobs is to take care of the horses, so to speak. Describe the acclimation process. Is it important for you or handicappers in general to watch those horses train in the days leading up to see which horses might be flourishing in their new surroundings and which ones might not be handling it so well?
Well, I mean, the thing is going to be is that these horses, for example, if I talk about the Arlington weekend, these horses are mostly going to ship in on Saturday or Sunday, this Saturday or Sunday, so they get here about a week before the race. They're based in the quarantine barn at Arlington. They're able to have that luxury of not having to move stables. They're under constant USDA supervision. They have to do 42 hours where they're locked into that stable area because while they have blood tests done and various temperatures taken and so forth. And that 42 hours, in fairness, probably just gives the horses a chance to recover from the very long journey. Recognizing these horses, if they start in England, they look on from England to Germany over to Chicago. So it's a pretty long and grueling trip, and they need that rest time. So after 42 hours, they'll go out and start training. Pretty likely, what I would suggest to your race watchers is not to pay too much attention to what they do in the mornings in terms of speed and workouts, because in reality, these horses will come fit and they will just try and easily just hack them and coast them into the races. The last thing they want to do is run them too hard in Chicago in the last run-up days. So they'll come in fit and well. You can listen to I'm sure Dave Zenner and the guys at Arlington, the various media outlets there, will be talking to the connections. You can always just read in the things like the Daily Racing Form to make sure that the travelling staff are happy with the horses and the way they've shipped and the way they've eaten and drunk up. I think those are some of the key factors in terms of their well-being. I wouldn't factor in too much how much of a workout they do, and I certainly wouldn't expect them to clock any times in that short 3 or 4 day period running up to the race. I think the form they've got back at home is far more important.
Now, we've gone over quite a few things when it comes to evaluating Euro talent, but if you're going to give the most important pieces of advice for someone that follows American racing on a day-to-day basis, there's an influx of horses coming over from Europe and some of these grass races and the evaluation process, as I mentioned, of them, what kind of homework do you think people should do to get the best handle on those horses?
Well, I think the two key factors are, I think, for start off, look at this season's form. A lot of these horses will come with fancy form lines over an extended period of time. I think it's important to look probably just at the 2013 form to get the true rating of these horses, and look at what we call group races or graded races, as they call it in the States, because it's definitely a notch up if you're running in group races over here. You will see that there are some key trial races. If you look at a race like the Arlington Million in American St. Leger, there was a race called the Sky Bet York Stakes at Grade 2 at York on the 27th of July, where no less than 3 of these horses, Grandeur, the Apache, and Wigmore Hall, all met. And I think that's the sort of those key form lines where the horses are meeting each other in group races. That's what you want to look at, and hopefully the Group 1s most of all.
Now, in closing, you're flying in next week for Arlington Million Day. Night schoolers like to get that inside information, so to speak, to help them cash tickets. Are there any Europeans in particular we should be keeping our eye on for next Saturday's festival at Arlington? Any of the favorites that you're very keen on, or any long shots that you think may surprise some people?
Yeah, well, I'm liking. I get there myself on Monday. The horses will be already going to the track. Start going to the track Monday, Tuesday. I'll be happy to chat to you during the week, Joe, with any updates. But at this outside point, I'd be saying in the Arlington Million, I really like a horse called Grandeur. He's been trained with the race in mind, and he ran very well at Santa Anita and Hollywood Park last back end when he won races like the Twilight Derby and the Hollywood Turf Cup. William Buick's going to be in the saddle, and he's won a million before now, so I like Grandeur in the Million. I think the St. Leger is a fascinating clash between Dandino and Wigmore Hall, who've been banging heads all year. There's not much between them on ratings, and I would just suggest that probably the bet there is an exacta or a reverse exacta between Dandino and Wigmore Hall. I can't see the Americans getting a look into that race. Beverly D, outstanding 2 fillies here called Dank and Duntle. They matched heads at Royal Ascot in a Group 2 over a mile. They're both outstanding fillies, although I find Marketing Mix is going to be very tough to beat in that race. I think she might outstay them. And in the Secretariat, it's very hard to assimilate this early 3-year-old form. I have a very nice improving horse from the Aga Khan called Viziani, and we know that he has outstanding success when he targets a horse of this race. I've got one from Jeremy Nacida called Jaeger, but I think if I was tipping one up, I'd probably go with the Aga just because Andrew Dupre knows what it takes to win this race.
Well, Adrian, thanks for your time and insights. Safe travels as always, and cheers, my friend.
Thank you very much, and good health to you. I'll see you next week. Bye now.